Hello,
Hello.
welcome to my resting place. My name is Lucy Montgomery Wooster Chapman. I was born on April 13th, 1875. I lived a long life and was able to experience many changes in our society and in our country. It was quite a journey from young adulthood at the turn of the century, 2 world wars, voting rights for women, horse and buggy to cars, aircraft to space. Luckily, I got out of here just in time to miss the emergence of the hippies. I was born in Cincinnati, Ohio, and moved with my family to Philadelphia. Not looking for the easy life, I prevailed upon my family in 1900 to allow me to study nursing at the Pennsylvania Hospital in Philadelphia. Now, that hospital was considered the best nursing school in the country. However, in the past, some homegrown nurses had very bad reputations. So you can understand that my parents had kind of a hissy fit when I decided that I wanted to be a nurse. But Florence Nightingale had come along and changed all of that. She turned around the poor care that had been given to the wounded in the Crimean War. She insisted on sanitation, on hygiene, on nutrition, and proper ventilation of the hospitals, and this markedly reduced the morbidity and mortality from infection. Her work became the model for the nursing standards in my day. Now, the training program at Pennsylvania Hospital included lectures by the medical, surgical, and outpatient staff, and training in the techniques of nursing and providing a proper environment for the patients. My adventure to Glens Falls, New York came about when Miss Jenny S. Dowd, a superintendent for the newly opened Glens Falls Hospital, sent a letter to recruit a professional nurse. Now, this nurse would work in a public hospital that had been opened on Park Street in Glens Falls. There were 2 wards, one male, one female, totaling 15 patients. Now, this hospital was considered very up-to-date for a small-town hospital and had many innovations you would find in a big city hospital. So the superintendent of my school, the eminently British Miss Lucy Walker, approached me about this position and said, "Lucy, Miss Dowd is looking for a young nurse with very strong leadership traits and who would do a good job of training the patients and providing patient care." Now, Glens Falls is a small town, but they say it is a very interesting and beautiful place to live. All right. Now, I prayed about this for about 5 minutes. It took me a bit longer to convince my family that I would be fine on my own, I was going to a good, safe place, and I was following in the adventuresome footsteps of my ancestor generals. So, in early January 1901, off I went. And I found myself working with 2 dynamic nurses who had trained at New Haven Hospital and who were totally committed to the standards of Florence Nightingale. The work was hard, the hours were long, but that is not what kept me awake at night. I found myself in the midst of a well-intentioned power struggle between Dr. Jerome Royal Eddy, whose vision and leadership had given birth to this wonderful hospital, and a superintendent who wanted a strong professional nursing staff. And Dr. Eddy wanted to hire and train local people. So here was a collision of ideals, of goals, of purpose, between two wonderful people who wanted only what was best for the patients who would use this hospital. Dr. Eddie was a very well-trained and skilled physician, and he was something of a saint. He had taken care of smallpox victims and others with infectious diseases at the local pest house when no one else would. On April 23rd, 1901, Miss Jenny S. Dowd and Miss Mabel E. Burnside resigned from their positions after just a few months on the job. On that date, I, Miss Lucy Wooster, became the emergent first superintendent of the lovely new Glens Falls Hospital. I chose not to jump into the fray. Instead, I just swallowed hard, silently nodded my assent, but my head was exploding with thoughts of how I would handle two jobs effectively with limits on professional staff. And I was hoping that my wonderful ancestral Revolutionary War general genes would kick in. Enter young Dr. George Andrew Chapman. George introduced himself to me at the hospital when I was in the midst of a patient treatment. He said some kind things to me, but I was so pressed for time, I just grunted something and kept working, and when I was done, I looked up, and he was still standing there, smiling. Over time, young Dr. George Chapman and I came to fall in love. At first, I thought his invitations to socialize were acts of charity, but I soon came to realize that he was sincere. George graduated from Baltimore Medical College in 1897, and he did a stint in the Spanish-American War, and then he did postgraduate work at New York College and at Johns Hopkins Baltimore Eye, Ear, Nose, and Throat, and the University of Edinburgh. And he even filled in on the practice of Dr. Lamone Thompson when that highly skilled and respected surgeon was away. And the Glens Falls paper said, young Dr. George Chapman is a competent young physician and has a very bright future before him. So, I was introduced to the lovely people of Glens Falls and to his amazing brother, Frederick Braden Chapman. Now, the Chapmans had roots in Ireland and had settled in Queensbury, farming for many years on Dixon Road. But Frederick had worked a number of places, but he settled in working at Finch Pine for 47 years. And he retired as treasurer there and became a director. He started a number of businesses. Does anybody here remember the beautiful Braden and Chapman music store on Glen? That building is still on Glen and Hudson. The Frederick Chapman family home on Glen Street is now the Chapman Historical Museum. In October of 1902, I resigned my position at the Glens Falls Hospital. George and I were married in 1903. We were assisted at our home at 23 Elm Street by Albina Kennedy, a lovely young Irish maid. Our son, Montgomery, was born in 1904. Montgomery took after his entrepreneurial uncle He earned law degrees and postgraduate degrees. He started a number of businesses, including the Chapman sales agency. He served in the Army in World War II as an intelligence officer. And then later, he was a basketball official and a football official, and he wrote a racing column, writing for the Glens Falls Times and radio station WWSC. His wife, Madeline, was also a naval officer. Our daughter, Catherine, was born in 1911, and she took after her father and me. She earned her nursing degree from Yale, and she married Dr. Herbert Francis, a radiologist who later became chief of the Department of Radiology at Vanderbilt Medical Center in Nashville, Tennessee. Catherine's nickname was Gracie because of her Gracie Allen style humor, which we can attribute totally to herself. George and I had a good life in Glens Falls. Frederick and his family and our family attended the First Presbyterian Church of Glens Falls, where I served on the Women's Missionary Society. I initiated and supported a study group for women's suffrage, and I promoted the efforts of women's suffrage, and we won. George passed away on December 15, 1946. He worked until his death, remaining as Warren County medical officer until then. He had never lost his passion for the betterment of medicine and the practice of medicine, serving as president of the New York State and Warren County Medical Societies. I remained in our home until 1956. I went down to join my sister in Palm Springs, and then I joined my daughter Catherine, where I passed away on October 18th, 1962, at the age of 87. It was a good run. And thank you so much for coming.